So here's where the good stuff starts. So I started out with, I think the first piece I picked up was this spark transmitter that showed up at a swap meet. And the guy was just taking out of his car, and I grabbed it out of his hands. I said, "I'll buy it." He says, "I didn't tell you how much yet." I said, "I'll buy it." So this is my first piece, and this is the piece that is on the CHRS website and a bunch of other websites. I've never actually plugged it in, because I've been a little leery to do it without testing the transformer first. But I'm presuming it would work. We got the famous, who just sent me something from Kilborn and Clark? That's their,
yeah, I did.
That's their antenna switch.
Yeah, I'm working on reconstructing their wireless kit.
Yeah, I saw the jars. That was pretty amazing.
We don't know if they work yet.
So anyway, this would be a complete quarter kilowatt station, all commercial parts. But as you know, nobody ever built stuff and put it on a board. You know, the stuff's dangerous. It was all spread out on a big desk. But anyway, I guess you have to kind of contain it. And one of the things I thought was unusual on this that I've never seen before is a kickback preventer. So I'm going to kind of go around this way. So the second thing I got interested when I started collecting was some of the really cool detectors, the crystal detectors. And so for whatever reason I started collecting those. And then I thought that was cool until I discovered coherers. And then I started collecting coherers. And as you can see, there's a few interesting ones up there. Actually, the most unusual one is actually not a very attractive one. This was Electro Importing Company Cohere. What was interesting about this, they figured out some sort of metal filings that automatically decohered. But, you know, it was sold for like 50 cents.
Well, that's pretty amazing.
And it's not pretty, but it's rare.
Yeah, I was unaware that they had managed to do that.
Yeah, and actually I have, I'm not going to show you all my paper goods, but I've got catalogs that have all this stuff in it. The other one's kind of interesting is the military 3 different mineral detector. I think it's an SE 1445 or something, World War I. But I've always been amazed with the old stuff that they would put on marble bases, you know, clapped Eastman. And
Partly that was for stability for the cat's whisker detector.
And labor was cheap, right?
Well, labor was cheap.
But people that come in here that aren't radio people, they look at this stuff. I don't even know how radio works. And what is this? And what are those? Oh, they're tubes.
Light bulbs.
Yeah, yeah. So this is actually a homemade coherer. I'm guessing somebody built it back in the day, and it's kind of amazing. Somebody like you might have built that up. Hard to put an age on that. Hey, if you want to touch any of this stuff, just feel free. I'll open it back up. And
right now, I'm really just astonished that somebody could do this for themselves. I was at the London Museum of Science and saw that one of the first coherers from the 1880s.
Really?
It was actually iron borings, you know, curlicues from iron borings that were put together by Lodge.
Wow.
And it worked.
Wow, what an opportunity to go to that museum.
Yeah, it was a great museum.
I've been to most of the U.S. ones, but nothing out of the country. Well, I've been out of the country, and I've never thought to find anybody that would know where they are. So then somehow I got into collecting spark keys, and there's some interesting keys here. I've got 4 Marconis. This is, Mike, you sent me this catalog for Anaka. Well, that's the key. It's missing the bottom wood base. And I've been hunting for what the base looks like, and thanks to you sending it, excuse me a minute, I found out, if you look down there,
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to find somebody that does woodworking that can route out a little piece of wood for me to put that in. But some of the keys of the day were really interesting, and I've got some military mixed in with some non-military, and a lot of brands that I can't identify, which kind of amazes me that companies made stuff and didn't put their name on it where you could, maybe it was a paper tag or something. Some of them have winker lights for use in aircraft.
Mm. Yeah, these are some serious wireless high voltage keys, you can tell. High voltage and high amperage.
Yeah. This one's kind of unusual. Usually these have the contacts on the bottom for screwing into a table. And this one looks like it came from the factory with the wires out the side. I examined it pretty good. It doesn't look like somebody drilled them through. So I didn't even know they made them that way. But this all World War I. And of course you have to have a couple of receivers to go with the stuff. And I picked this up at the, I guess they never really made a Atwater Kent crystal set. Although here be one. Probably put together from parts. It actually has a tag on it, but somebody wrote crystal on it, and thinking this was I forget what model, had a tube unit over here. So I'm guessing.
Could have been a 5 with some tubes over there, but but I don't know. Maybe they did make a crystal set. I don't know.
Well, the theory, everything I've read on the crystal set was that they sold parts kits. And they didn't really advertise them very well, and mostly the ones that, if they do exist, were likely employees or people like that, or people that were dealers that knew about it and put them together.
Well, one of the things that was happening in the 1950s, I know from reading the old magazines, is that people would get the parts and build things, and they looked just like something that...
Yeah, and that could very well be what that is. But some of these keys have amazing feel to them, despite all the heavy contacts and so forth. So these two Marconis are really post-war. This one is probably about somewhere in the 20s. And this would be just a little bit later. That's probably in the 30s, but they were just so neat. What's cool about them when you find them, they're painted battleship gray. They're not real attractive. So when I read that these are brass underneath, I took it to a brass guy and I said, strip the paint, polish the brass. He replayed it, and these come with a, I only have one cover, but they come with a cover.
Was that gray as well?
Yeah, just ugly, and plus the paint stripped and everything. And allegedly, at least the guy on eBay that I paid for it, this is supposed to be a Marconigram unused from probably the 20s. I don't think it goes back to the teens. It doesn't look that old. But anyway, I thought I ought to have it with the keys.
Yeah, well, if it's Marconi of America, let's see, they were over by, I think, 1921 when RCA came into being.
Marconi Wireless Telegraph Company of America, is that?
Yeah, so it's no later than 1921, 22. And whenever RCA absorbed Marconi, that's when they started having RCA grams.
So this is, I'll take these off. This is one of my favorite keys. It's a little bit later. It's got big enough contacts to be a spark key, but it's after spark. But if anybody operates CW here?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Well, it's got a very interesting feel to it, sound to it.
Sounds almost telegraphic.
Yeah,
up and
yeah,
down.
yeah.
So
this was an embassy key. It had a wooden top that went on it. Of course, people lose the tops. They lose the winding keys to these teleprinters. I don't know where they are. And sort of ran into the teleprinters, but this one is the only one that's really interesting. kind of jumping around in years, but it had an ink tank with a little siphon hose.
Yep.
So I think this is 1890s, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually.
Just cool stuff. So my main passion has become the gaps. Typically, you only find interesting gaps when somebody passes on and they're doing a big sale. And so I've got some Murdochs and some. I got a lot of Murdoch stuff. And Amarad. This one I spent about 5 years finding out who made it. It was made by Young and McCombs, but it was sold as a kit. So you bought the wheel, and the wheel was made by some other company who, I did research on. There's 2 or 3 companies made wheels. They all looked identical, so you wondered whether one just private labeled for the other.
Yeah.
But you just bought the contacts and the wheel and the motor and put the thing together. This is another one I probably spent way too much getting. This is a... This is a Haller and Cunningham.
Ah, San Francisco.
Yeah.
Yep.
But really, like all the stuff of the day, it's just built really well. And this one is the biggest contacts I've seen in a rotary. I have no idea what brand it is. I've scoured through magazines and I can't find it. And then this, I got to fix the crack in here, but this is a really cool, oh boy, it's falling apart. Very nice set of oscillation coils for a low power transmitter, all threaded. That's going to be my next project, to fix that. Still got the name tag on, but I can't read it with my old eyes. Put my glasses on. And then various spark coil transmitters, all of which will work if you put power on them. I believe the Rumscoff coil right there is an Amarad. It's a recent purchase.
Is Amarad and Amrad the same company?
Amarad, yeah.
Right.
Amarad. American Radio
Yes.
something.
Right.
But some of these fixed gaps amaze me, and you see a lot of the common ones around, but ones like this, it's just hard to part with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, certainly made to dissipate a lot of heat.
This one I've got at eBay right now. It looks like a homebrew with a little DC motor that works in reverse of a normal spark gap that the contact is made when it's in between the holes. Sort of interesting.
The hole breaks the contact.
Yeah, sort of interesting.
Yeah.
I can't imagine putting high voltage on this little teeny contact stuff. Maybe 800 volts, 1000 volts tops.
How long have you been collecting all these things?
Since about 1999 I started collecting. Before that it was just ham gear. I lived out east. I had this gigantic basement and I had these huge setups of ham gear, all of the stations, hooked to a switch where you can put them on there, and that was great. AM broadcasting. Got into all the neighbors' hi-fi equipment and kicked us out of the neighborhood. Put a 100-foot tower up in a residential neighborhood and it wasn't real popular. So this is another one of the spark transmitters. This one is set up and working.
Oh yeah.
Lighting up the fluorescent tube.
Oh yeah.
And if you were listening on a radio, even though there's no antenna,
Right.
So I got a lot of pieces that are clap E-stem, but then I got a lot of pieces that look like they're clap E-stem based on the color of the marble they use. Amazing coil. I don't see any signs that it had clips on it, but it must have had clips somewhere to put the power on it. But again, you know, amazing they use marble on a coil like that.
I've got half a Murdoch. I think it's Murdoch because it's
Oh, you do?
a flat ribbon.
Oh,
I've been
okay.
looking for 30 years for the other half.
Yeah.
Or any
When you
half.
need a part, you can spend 30 years looking. So I've got other various oscillation
Yeah,
coils,
yeah.
but I used to, I've already sold them. I had some big coils out of a Navy spark transmitter with the coil number A4 and A3 for different frequencies, and they were just collecting dust around here, and I have a guy that's in my Spark App radio collectors group that has Navy spark transmitters and arc transmitters, and so I sold them to him. So now it gets into my other interesting side passion of collecting. So somehow I acquired some World War I gear. If you're familiar, this is the BC-14A crystal receiver as used in trenches in World War I with the correct headphones. And that was used to receive artillery instructions from the biplanes, which had this transmitter, which is, I believe, a BC-15, if I remember right. So I've actually got some of the manuals for that, and I've actually got an unused World War I military message book. The original key, spark-proof key, and you guys know what this is, right?
It's the antenna, the trailing
Yeah, this
antenna.
is a trailing antenna,
Yeah, sure.
yeah. So this is a very rare piece. And the reason it's rare is because it wasn't called a transmitter, it was called a coil set. And I ran across this in an auction. I said, well, what the hell is a coil set? So I started looking, I said, God, that sure looks like a spark gap. Well, it turns out, you know, and there's a key, but the guy had the picture with the box closed, and it just says coil set on there somewhere. Yeah, portable spark coil set. But what this is what the guy in the trench would have sent the message back to battalion. Battalion probably was pretty close, you know, a mile or two away. But anyway, and believe it or not, with the original strap still on it. So this stuff's got to go to a good home where somebody will.
There was a system in the First World War. Jim Maxwell knew a lot about it and actually bought all the remainder books, the guy who wrote the history of it, that used something like that as through-the-ground telegraph.
Yeah, well, as a kid,
Yeah.
I read an article in Popular Science, probably Electronics.
Yeah.
I was about 11 years old,
Yeah, Jerry,
transmitting through the ground.
Carl and Jerry, yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
actually got it. It went about a half a block.
Well, the Army did something like that for the trenches. I don't recognize that piece, but they did something so that, but I don't know whether it used spark or not, but they did have a system to do exactly that.
So here's the article on that piece. And this is kind of interesting. Here's the biplane. I had a big thing on my Spark Collectors thing. People were trying to get pictures of where this transmitter would have gone in the plane. So somebody sent me the picture.
This transmitter.
This
I mean the 15, yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at, you can't really see in here, but if you shined a flashlight on there, you can see the gap.
That's how you knew it was working.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's why you had the light on that other key. Because I guess they used this for a while, and you couldn't tell it was sending. So they went over to the open key that had the light.
Yeah, because you sure wouldn't be able to hear that gap up in an airplane like that.
Well, it's low power too. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how much power it runs, but I can't think it's go very far.
Let me take a picture of this. I'll look in the
Yeah, let me-
book that Jim Maxwell had.
Want to take it here?
Yeah, that's fine. I can see if there's, yeah, that's great. All right, let me flip the top. You ready, Mike? I'll flip the top.
Okay.
Okay, now let me take you back early times. So this receiver is a Clark Wireless Telegraph, 1903 Model C, carried in a mule pack.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of these around.
No, I've never seen one before. Yeah, signal core type C, wow.
It's funny, you know, until I met you guys, you've identified a bunch of my stuff. But I used to go on and, my group of collectors, and there's a lot of people like yourself that really dig into the archives.
Mm-hmm.
And you can spend years trying to find documentation, then all of a sudden, Mom, here's a whole book on it.
Yes, that's right. Well, that's what's happening with our Society of Wireless Pioneers collection now, is we're finally getting into it, scanning it and getting up, and there's marvelous things. The DeForest catalog from, about 1918, for example.
Now, where did that stuff reside before they gave it to you?
It was in a warehouse in San Rafael. Everybody had just gotten too old, and the last man standing was Waldo Boyd. He was 94.
Wow.
And I got in touch with him, and we talked about it, and we have a museum, we can take care of it. So we made a deal with them to make sure that it was treated well. So we took 60 boxes of archives out, which winnowed down to about 35, and that's what we're working with right now.
Amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Here, just kind of an FYI, is a picture of how the mule pack.
Oh yes.
We thought maybe you had the mule.
It's in the other room. It's stuffed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of amazing when you see the pictures of the mules. These are the big coils. Unfortunately, they're already sold.
Yes. Yes.
So I thought I ran across the box that the mules carried over here.
Oh, man.
So I'm not going to open this, but every time I find a picture of how the World War I guys had a box, they were all different boxes. There's the ones the mule carried. So about a year ago, I just stuck some equipment in there, made a portable station out of it, got some dowels, put it up on legs, and the thing was so wobbly I took the legs back out. But I think, but I can't prove, this is World War I, either a radio box or it could have been an officer's writing desk or something. But anyway, it opens on both sides, front and back. Kind of cool. So anyway, that's pretty much what I've got. I do a little buying and selling now and then, so the collection changes from time to time.